First, thank you for having me. This coloring book definitely became a labor of love. When I first started, it was the project that I was given right away. I thought it was kind of thought out and planned out, and I just kind of had to press play. That was far from the case. So we met in the summer of 2019, the end of the summer, and Nigel Redden, who was a former general director of Spoleto, said that he had dinner one night with Jonathan Green, which is a very popular and famous visual artist here in the Charleston area of South Carolina. And so Jonathan Green said, I would love to do a coloring book for the children of South Carolina. And Nigel thought, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Let me find the money. Let me make that happen. And so the two of them put their heads together, and they laid the opportunity on me. And so the first thing that I did was I met with everybody in the organization that had anything to do with the forward-facing part of the organization. So that's PR marketing, some extent box office, but mostly PR marketing and artist services. The thought was, if we do a coloring book, being in the state of South Carolina, we may get some kind of pushback. And so we wanted to be as delicate and sensitive as possible, so that the very genuine nature that both Nigel and Jonathan came up with was not taken away. It wasn't tarnished in any sort of way. So in the very beginning, really, it was saying to ourselves, okay, what do we want the students to learn? Do we want them to learn all of the history? And who are the students that we think would be best to learn this? Would it make sense for it to be a third grader? Would it make sense for it to be a ninth grader or seventh grader? So the next thing I did is I went to the social studies standards. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but Jonathan Green, he came up with about, I would say, about 40 pages of artwork. And he first asked me for a lookbook, where he said, what about the 17th through 19th century West Africa is most visible, is most popular, is an understatement almost. Like if you see it, you know exactly where it is. And so the first thing I thought about is Arabic, and the idea of the history of Arabic in terms of speakers and the written word, and also the culture that Arabic is in dealing with Islam, is something that undeniably is linked together with West Africa during this time in the history. Then the next thing is the mosque. Many people know of the mosque that is Mali, and Mali is touted as the first university in the world, or excuse me, having the first university in the world of higher thought, where people can come and learn. And so I went to the library and I literally found old pictures, and I mean old. Like, I opened the book and I don't think anybody had checked it out in a long time, because I wanted to find physical evidence and not just something that I could Google. So on your screen, you see in the center is a circle, and at the very top, it says Omar approaching the mosque. So a lot of the things that you see in the book is Jonathan's creative liberty or impression on what Omar would have seen. And also it is colored in. So I'll go back to this in a little bit, but the back of the book are thumbnails of how all of the images could really look if they were actually colored in. But throughout the book, you'll see slightly different. On the right side of the screen is when Jonathan actually met with the students. And he's seen in the back there, but this was out in front of a dress rehearsal. So I just thought that was pretty cool. But Jonathan Green, being the illustrator and being very much an advocate for arts and education, he was actually able to do this for nominal cost. Basically, he volunteered and we didn't have to pay him for his artwork, right? So his payment really was the opportunity to engage with these students and to see that his art helped to grow their understanding of different types of content. So going back to the social studies standards, in South Carolina, 8th grade learners learn about the context of South Carolina within the United States and the world in 8th grade. So from that initial meeting in the summer of 2019, I realized that 8th grade would perhaps be the best grade to start with. Actually, I thought it would probably be the only grade and it would stop there. But what I learned later on is that once teachers receive books, they can talk to their other colleagues, and their other colleagues may be in the 7th grade or in the 6th grade that they're talking to. And so once a school receives the books kind of take a life on their own. So teachers started talking amongst themselves, 8th grade teachers and 7th grade all the way to 5th, and probably 4th and 3rd also started talking. And so the book started floating. And so if an 8th grade teacher didn't want it, then it went to another classroom. And before you know it, it was so many different types of students who received the book that it was great, but I also grew concerned because the thought is that it matched the social studies standards that you see here. So the civic participation, the cultural interactions, development of political ideas and institutions, economic decision-making, and geographic relationships. Basically, the book is designed to make sure that it hits most of all these points, but in particular, diverse perspectives. How can we say what happened in history without covering all parts of history tastefully? And so the book itself, or at the time it was considered a coloring book, was meant to do all of these different things. And so when it was just pictures, like I showed you before, it definitely left something to be desired. So if you're a student and you're just looking at pictures, it's possible that you may not understand what's going on. You may not understand that the people who were being enslaved are a particular race, and you may not understand a person who is running away may be a particular race. You also may not understand that they're going to a mosque as opposed to a temple. So after a while, the conversation grew beyond just social studies standards and making sure the pictures are not only historically correct, but academically correct, to making sure that they actually taught a lesson. So I'm going to stop for a minute and ask everybody, obviously has the book. Is there anybody on the call who has not had a chance to like thumb through it? Or if you have a pressing question, please put that in the chat. But in general, what we decided to do is to try to figure out how to teach sensitivity and civility, right? So the first part obviously is an introduction, but beyond that, and you'll see this in the book here, are questions and answers. And that is meant to make sure that a person, a student, a learner is following along and able to comprehend what is actually going on before they're actually going to use a crayon or marker or what have you. We want to make sure that the history part is taken care of, and the correct history. The other thing that we thought about is partnering with different types of organizations. One was Crayola. We didn't actually move forward with that thought, but the thought is that Crayola has these skin color markers and crayons. We decided against really following up with that opportunity. We actually never reached out to Crayola, but we decided against reaching out to them mainly because Jonathan weighed in quite heavily, which I understand now, that you want the students' creativity to be able to reflect on what it is that they have learned and what they understand. And so I said, what if he or she colors a person green. Isn't that offensive? And what if he or she colors the person who should be white black, and black white, or orange? Um, and not only Jonathan, but other educators said, well, if that is the creativity behind the child's understanding, then let the child reflect how they would like. But it's up to the teacher, the educator, to say that although you may have creativity in your coloring, please make sure you also understand the actual facts of history. And so by writing these things down in the coloring book, it began to be a workbook. So we changed it from a coloring book to workbook, and we added the ways to kind of self-reflect. So you can fill in the blank, you can add a few words, add a few sentences. We did this throughout the entire workbook. Also, the idea of not coloring everything was done on purpose so that a student had sort of a heads up or a head start. Also, so that it was a bit of a change, so every page would look different. It was never a moment where you as a child would be bored. And also, in the event that your younger brother or sister wanted to take on your book after you know, kind of graduated out of it, it still may be of interest to them, because the thought was that there are some learners who may have aged out, right? Eighth graders who are about 13 or 14 may look down on coloring, but some do not. So it was meant to also capture kind of that younger learner in the future, right? But the focus was still on the eighth grade learner who would also be challenged by the fill in the blanks. The next are the activities in the back. So in the very back, there's a glossary. So right after the art, Jonathan Green, of how it all actually looked, there is a glossary in the back. The glossary is meant to do exactly what glossaries do, be a dictionary and define what the words are in the context of the usage of the workbook. And then also most exciting for me was the ability to trace. So, most English speakers and writers and learners probably are unfamiliar with writing left to right as opposed to right to left. And also, we don't typically write in the same type of script that Arabic is written in. And so this was an opportunity for student learners to trace and learn how to say the numerals or the alphabet. And then finally was the questions for discussion, which is kind of next to last on the page here. And that was an opportunity for the entire classroom to take advantage of what they may have learned individually. For a teacher, an educator to go in front of the class, or maybe even divide the class up and say, hey, everybody tackle these particular questions, and let's reunite and figure out what everybody's answers are and really reflect. So the entire book grew definitely from a coloring book to a workbook, but now it's also on the website. The results from it all is that there is over 6,000 learners who received a free workbook, thanks to different types of sponsors, both national and state sponsors. Different schools in Berkeley and Dorchester, which is part of the Tri-County, Charleston County area, received free workbooks. They even had teaching artists. We partnered with Engaging Creative Minds, and there were teaching artists who came to the classroom. One artist did a zine based off of Omar and used the coloring workbook to be a supplement. And then all of them were invited to a dress rehearsal. It was a little difficult to coordinate, I'll be honest. Several of the students the year before had aged out because they were in 8th grade and they had already, left and went to 9th grade. mainly because we kept postponing the premiere due to COVID. But it nonetheless, if they were able to have the book and go to the dress rehearsal, the two offered a deeper understanding of both the content and different ways of learning. So you see on the left side of the screen, is signing the books for several of the students. I think really a lot of them enjoyed it. Not pictured here are some of the teachers who corralled around him, so excited about getting to know him and meet him. He's definitely a local star. He's on the level with, I would say, Colbert and Bill Murray. So people, when they see the three of them walking downtown, people stop and ask questions. And as I said before, another result is the fact that it's online. So if you wanted to go to Spoleto Festival USA, you could go to the website and getting involved, and you scroll all the way down, and there are worksheets. Basically, it's the same book, but it just, instead of it being in a book format, it's just individual sheets, as well as the answer key and the discussion questions. And so I'll end by saying that these are different resources. I can send these out kind of separately, but I'll talk through them quickly. The Post and Courier is sort of like the Raleigh News and Observer, where if it's captured in there, it's quite respected. And so the Post and Courier did a very lengthy project about Omar, Omar ibn Said, the man, as well as the opera itself. And so several of its staff went over to Senegal and took pictures and video and interviewed different people there, worked with different professors as well. And so all of these different types of experiences were captured throughout from 2019-ish, 2020 until 2022. It also won Pulitzer, and so there's a lesson plan there that's available. So that could also be of help when you're trying to teach students, or if you're trying to get different ideas. And then, of course, you know, PBS and Library of Congress have several links about Omar ibn Said, the man, so that if a student is a visual learner, but also audio learner, and they want to listen to a video, that they could also do that there.